Peace family, I'm LaShawn and I am the Executive Secretary for TPA. What we are doing today, or what we're doing for the next few days, is coming up with our TPA slate. We're getting ready for the August 7th primaries. These are some of the candidates that we are backing, and we want to give you a little in-depth information or ask some questions for the candidates so that you guys have an idea of why we chose to pick these people. Who they are, why they are important, what are some of the issues that we hear some of the citizens in Detroit talking about. We want to have them answer the questions. We want you to be able to come back to use this slate and this video as a reference. So y'all check it out for us.
Hi, I'm State Representative Fred Durhal, and I'm running for State Senator in District 4. The boundaries go to 8 Mile in Van Dyke, to 8 Mile in the Lodge, down to Southwest Detroit, to Lincoln Park, Allen Park, and Southgate.
Hey, Fred Durhal, I want to thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Man, it's a pleasure, man. I really got a lot of respect and I admire the work that you're doing. So we're 2 weeks underway before the elections for August 7th. I know this is a big race for you. Right now you're a state rep for District 5.
Right.
You're running right now for the House of Senate. And this is going to be a big race for you. I love your platform, man. You talk about a lot of different issues. So I just want to go ahead and jump right in it. It's something that's been very prevalent in the city of Detroit. Something that has affected the demographics, the population. When we're talking about, we got people that live here that actually uses other addresses outside of the city, so they don't have to pay the high rates of auto insurance.
Right.
We've had many people in the past come, say that they're going to fix it, that they're going to lower the rates, different proposals, but no one has been able to really fix the problem. There's a red line in the city of Detroit when it comes to auto insurance. What are we going to do about it, Fred? What steps can we take? Do you have a plan? If you don't have a plan, are you willing to take some steps forward collectively to create a plan that's feasible for the city of Detroit?
Well, first let me say I appreciate you for even coming out here to talk about that. And I think you're right. That is one of the biggest issues that we face here in our state, and particularly our city, when it comes to auto insurance. And one of the issues why is because of the systemic discrimination that goes on here in our city. The discriminatory factors when they ask you, what's your zip code, what's your credit score, what's your highest level of education, what's your occupation, what's your gender, all things that have nothing to do with your driving record, have nothing to do with how you drive, or they're non-driving factors. So I've already co-sponsored a plan as state representative. I've been a state rep for the last 4 years. I'm the former assistant Democratic leader of the House. But this past term this term that we're in right now, co-sponsored a 12-bill package. It's a bipartisan package that lowers auto insurance rates, and it's called the Fair and Affordable Plan. And one of the things that it does, it addresses the systemic discrimination. It removes those non-driving factors when it comes to determining a rate for your auto insurance. It creates a fraud prevention authority as well. Because people talk about fraud, and that's what causes the rates to be high, which is untrue. So it creates a fraud authority as well, and then it does a few other things as well to guarantee folks have lower rates here in our state. These plans that they have out right now, they're called driver's choice. It's really not choice. I tell folks all the time, choice is not the same thing as capitulation. Capitulation is when you push somebody in the corner, right, and they have no other choice. And so what this driver's choice plan does is limit your coverage, and doesn't even give you a guaranteed benefit, a guaranteed reduction. Folks say, hey, listen, this will give you 10% off, 20% off. Folks in the city of Detroit, particularly in my district, are paying like $4,000 to $5,000 a year. So 10% off is like $500. Thank you, but no thanks. We deserve the same rates as everybody else.
And that's real good to hear, because hopefully we get everybody on the slate, because it's one of the other slates also doesn't believe in the driver's choice. I personally don't as well. When you know that, when you have education on the driver's choice, and you know that, they give you this option, but it's not, it's a limited choice. They don't have full coverage over certain things. So it's like taking a large part of the pie and just giving you maybe about 1/3 of it and saying, hey, we're going to get this to you for a little cheaper, which we want the whole pie. So let's go to the next question that I have for you. A lot of citizens are being pushed out due to not being able to afford some of these, new houses and new development that's coming in. Are you supportive of, affordable housing? you know, when it's, you know, that's been proposed. I know Mary Sheffield came up with one about a year ago. Do you have anything, or are you an advocate for anything when it comes to affordable housing?
Well, I think affordable housing is very important. First of all, let me say, some folks don't believe gentrification is real, and it is very real. One of my main concerns as a legislator, as we look at businesses and corporations coming into the city, one is community benefits. I think that is a very huge issue that we have to have. You know, businesses coming in have to have relationships with the communities that they're coming into. I am for building new houses, new housing, and new development. But I think we also have to be sensitive to the nature that there have been folks here 40, 50, 60 years, particularly after the 67 incidents, that have been hanging on. And the state has failed to provide resources for the city in the forms of revenue sharing and things that is needed. And Detroit is just getting back on its feet. But that doesn't mean that the folks who have been staying here and keeping this city going for 40, 50, 60 years should be pushed out. We shouldn't have a Detroit that's a tale of two cities, where you have an extreme level of poverty, then an extreme level of high income. We've got to be able to bridge these gaps. Inclusion is one of the very most important aspects. And we've seen this happen across the nation as well. I mean, it's happened in Harlem. It's happened in other areas around our country, in Cleveland. But we've got to make sure our citizens are able to afford and be able to live in the Detroit that they've been sticking with forever.
Next question I have is for you. The roads, man. It's hard, man. I mean, I honestly think that Detroit, Michigan has probably, if not in the top two, the worst roads in the country. I mean, it's horrible. I mean, if you're driving, you know, if you have a car and you own it and you've been driving in Michigan for over 3 years, it's pretty safe to say you're gonna have to get some body work done to it. I mean, these potholes are crazy, man. What can we do, Fred? Is it something that we can do about it? I mean, what's going on with that?
Well, I think the number one thing that we have to do is investment. I mean, we've got to invest in our roads. You look at any other state around the country, they invest in their roads. Here in Michigan, the problem is that we kick the can down the road for too long. No pun intended. When we talk about roads, you know, you think about the 2015 failed Republican plan, which is a big fail. That the money put in that plan wasn't supposed to take effect until about 2022. Okay, and I don't know if they thought that some magic fairy dust would stop the roads from crumbling, but they've got considerably worse. So investment is important. So when we talk about investment, what are we talking about? We've got close to $1 billion right now that sits in the rainy day fund for the state of Michigan. This is called the Budget Stabilization Fund, basically, you know, a fund you can reach from. We need to put that in our roads. It costs about $1 million per mile to fix these roads. So one, we've got to draw money from resources that we already have, close to $1 billion to fix our roads. But I think one of the most important things we have to do is fix our formula here in our state. There's a formula called Public Act, or PA 51, which is the road distribution formula, which is a law. And basically it distributes the amount of funding to basically folks up north who have the most mileage. It's based on mileage. The problem is they have more miles, but they don't have as much traffic as we have here. So the tri-county areas such as Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb, the reason why they have the worst roads in the state, because this is where all the heavy trucks come to do business. This is where most of the citizens have cars or own cars, and they use traffic. There's no dirt roads.
Needs to be changed.
So the formula needs to be changed as well. And that's what, you know, I would look at working on when I become state senator.
Education. Okay, let's look at Detroit, man. Detroit, we had a lot of schools that were shut down, closed down, you know, due to a variety of reasons, you know, the assessment test. I mean, Detroit, just this year, I believe, tested the lowest in the country, you know. So the quality of education has not been up to par. So can you share your insight, and do you have a plan, or, you know, for the education?
Well, again, education is paramount. You know, I think that investment again is key in education, but not only just throwing money at our schools, but also providing a comprehensive plan. And in order to be able to do that, you got to work with all stakeholders. That means you have to work with parents. You also have to work with teachers. You have to work with administrators, and all come together to the table and decide how we're going to fix our educational system here in our state. Betsy DeVos is not going to do it for us. I can promise you that. But investment is more important. I always talk investment because I look at the pipeline of prison. When you talk about the pipeline of prison, you look at the fact we're spending $37,500 per year per prisoner, but the average per pupil allocation that we spend in Detroit Public Schools is $7,800 a year. You look at that. Okay, it's unbalanced.
$30,000 difference.
And it's no secret that miseducation can lead to prison. So we've got to focus on reading as well. And one of the reasons why our test scores are low, because we have not taken a comprehensive look as a state to focus on reading, which is why I got $2.5 million from a program that will come into Detroit Public Schools and start teaching reading in a different type of way to get kids involved in that. But I think we've got to look at different methods across the board to be able to get to our kids and reach our children. And then we also got to reach the parents, because we can't forget that some of our parents have become parents and have been products of the same type of school system that has failed them. And so we've got to make sure that our parents are educated. Adult education is very important here in our state. We got to make sure that they're educated so they'll be able to help their children as well. And so it's a cycle, and it's a whole community that needs to take and address education together.
I know you. Some of the people don't know you, man. I know you, man. You put in work. You know, I'm very proud of the work you're doing, man. I'm gonna try my best to make sure you get in office, man. Because just how politically astute and educated you is, and how sincere you are. I feel comfortable with knowing that you're gonna be in the House of Senate. Give people the background for who may not know who Fred Durhal is, the history, and you know, your experience, and what makes you the best candidate for this seat.
Well, I always say who Fred Durhal is. You know, I'm your neighbor, man. I'm your brother. You know, in this community, I love my people, and that's why I do what I do. You know, I come from a family who has a lifelong history of service. My father was a state representative prior to me. He served over 6 years, and I spent time in Lansing learning the legislative process and developing some legislative acumen, if you will. And then I ran for office in 2014, got elected, got over 50% of the vote here because we touched the people. Became assistant Democratic leader. Now I'm the top Democrat over the House Appropriations Committee. Our state budget, $56 billion a year. But all of that's good. But Fred Durhal is a fighter. That's who I am. I love my people. I've got a strong backbone. No matter if it's the mayor, or no matter if it's the governor. If policies are not right for my people, I don't support them. But I fight, every day. You look at the Dexter Amherst Center. We got them $200,000 to reopen the center. And this is in an area where crack back in the 80s and 90s hit the hardest. Dexter, YBI, the home of YBI, right? But now we've got a center open so the youth can come. And that was very instrumental. We talk about saving programs like Flip the Script, which is a program designed to derail the pipeline of prison. I'm the guy that saves that funding every year, $2.5 million.
Wow.
I work with my colleagues to do that. Same thing with Focus Hope. And then the same thing with the DAPSET program, which helps and teaches our kids STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We work and fight to save that program every year when Republicans try to cut it. And so Durhal is somebody who delivers.
Well, Fred, man, it's been a pleasure. It's been an honor.
Thank you, man.
You coming out, man.
Appreciate that.
Oh, man, I really do. Y'all make sure y'all vote for Fred Durhal, House of State Senate,
District 4.
District 4.
Hey everyone, I'm Latisha Johnson. I'm your candidate for state representative in District 2, from West Village to Grosse Pointe Farms, including East English Village, Morningside, Cornerstone, Jefferson Chalmers, and all of the neighborhoods in between.
So Latisha, thank you for coming out.
Absolutely.
And participate. You helped us with the Morningside as far as the adopted block and doing the cleanups. I wanted to ask you, by me doing work, which I want to know, why are you running for state rep for District 2 at this time?
I'm running because we need change. Not happy with what I'm seeing in the city, especially on the east side. We need to make sure we help to empower our residents and improve our communities. I'm running because our education system is absolutely horrible. I grew up in the city of Detroit on the east side, graduated from Detroit Public Schools, and I realized the importance of having a good quality education. I'm the 5th of 8 children, and I'm the first one in my family to get a college degree.
Wow. Okay. So what do you plan on doing in terms of improving the educational system? Because we're seeing, like, specifically in the city of Detroit, with all the high schools that have been getting closed down at a random rate due to the assessments, the test assessments of the schools and stuff like that. What do you plan on doing?
So we need to first stop closing neighborhood schools, because we're seeing that our kids don't have schools that they can go to close to their neighborhoods. When we look at the charter schools that are coming on board, we're funding them at the same level that we fund public school education, but the standards are not being met. So we have charter schools that don't provide education for special needs children. And so we have all these kids in the neighborhoods that are trying to figure out where they're going to school, not to mention how they're getting there. So one of the first things we need to focus on is making sure that we have early childhood learning centers for our young kids, because believe it or not, kids that come from low-income households hear on average 300 words a day. Kids that come from middle-income households hear 3,000 words a day, and that makes a tremendous difference in how our kids learn how to put words together and understand words. So we need to make sure that we have all the resources that we're given to our parents and our kids for them to be able to grow up and be successful in life, and we know it starts with education.
Okay. Now, my next question is the insurance. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
When we're thinking about insurance in the city of Detroit, I mean, really, to be honest with you, a lot of people don't even use Detroit addresses so they can get cheaper insurance.
Right.
So we don't even know the true population
Right.
of it. And then, so my question is to you, what would you do in regards to insurance with the red line in the city of Detroit? Because in certain pockets of the state, we know in certain areas the insurance is completely different.
Right.
So how can we change that? Because this has been one of the major concerns of people in the city of Detroit in terms of the insurance rate.
They're not using their address in the city of Detroit. That means what? They can't vote in the city of Detroit, right?
That's correct.
So we need to make sure that we address the real issues. The real issues are the territorial rating. When you can dictate what my auto insurance rate is going to be based on my zip code, it has absolutely nothing to do with me, let alone nothing to do with my driving record, right? So that is discriminatory. It's a practice that's being used, and we need to stop them from using it. We need to make sure that fraudulent claims are being addressed, and we reduce the fraudulent claims that happen, because we end up all paying for people who say, okay, I was hurt in an automobile accident, and they really weren't.
Right.
So we have to address that. We also have to work on containing costs from automobile accidents.
Okay.
Those three things are the reasons that our insurance rates are really high. But of course, in the city of Detroit, it has all to do with the redlining that plays a huge role, and it's discriminatory. And my whole platform is about addressing systemic policies that perpetuate oppressive conditions.
Okay.
Because when you have to pay excessive auto insurance rates, that means you're having difficulty paying for medication, paying for food, paying for housing, all of those things. So we have to definitely make sure we address that.
Okay. And I guess my last question would be, here in the city of Detroit, when we think about also, there's been a big commotion and big talk about gentrification. About how downtown developers are coming to the city of Detroit. They're developing, but people that have been natives and been Detroit residents all their life are not being included. How do we keep residents in the city of Detroit? How do we sustain the whole thing of them being permanent residents and not being excluded out because they can't afford to live here? So what are your goals and what are your plans for that?
So quality affordable housing is another one of the issues I want to tackle because of everything that you just said, right? So from a state legislative perspective, we have to make sure that we continue to extend and expand the neighborhood enterprise zone, the NEZ, which reduces our local tax rate. We have to make sure that people within our communities have access to the poverty tax exemption application, and we don't make it so cumbersome that people don't understand it and that people are not applying for it. But I want to take it a step further. I want to make it where people are allowed to be exempt for 3 years prior, so that we make it retroactive, and that they don't have to apply every single year unless their income changes, right? Because if we know that you were at a poverty level 1 year and your income hasn't changed, then you can continue to receive the exemption. Another issue is when we look at quality affordable housing and we give millions of dollars to developers to develop property in the city of Detroit, it's not affordable for Detroiters because they lump us in with Livonia and Warren, and so an affordable home that's being developed today is for somebody that makes about $56,000 a year. The average Detroiter makes $26,000 a year. So I want to make it a requirement that when you are developing a property in the city of Detroit or whatever municipality you're developing in, you have to make sure that the rates are affordable for the people that live in that municipality.
I do want to ask you this last question. For the people in the city of Detroit that are able to vote for you, that stays in your district, what's going on? What is your experience? Because people in Morningside, people in East Village, I know they're very familiar with you. You've been doing community work. I personally know that you're very qualified, one of the most politically astute candidates that we have that's running for state rep.
Thank you.
But for the people who do not know who Latisha Johnson is, or may just heard of your name, what background and experience can you share with us for those people?
So to keep it brief, for the last 11 years, I've been a community advocate out here fighting for the people, addressing foreclosure issues, making sure people understood that their property was going into foreclosure, and helping them to get out of the situation so that we could keep people within our communities. I've done a number of things. You see us out here cleaning up. I was an AmeriCorps member for 2 years. We cleaned up, boarded up houses throughout the city of Detroit in inclement weather. Didn't matter because it's all about improving our communities and empowering our people. So I also served 3 years on the Board of Zoning Appeals for the city of Detroit, which is a legislative role. I think that's the experience that sets me apart from all the other people in the race, because it is an open seat and nobody else has that level of experience. I also have a finance degree from the University of Michigan, so I think, all of that experience coming together makes me the best candidate because I will be the voice of the people. I understand legislation, and I'm going to fight for the people.
Okay. Well, y'all heard it from her, straight from her mouth. Please get out and vote on August 7th. Polls are already, they're doing satellite voting right now, so you can actually go to the polls and vote now. But please, if you are in her area, make sure you vote for this lady. TPA will be endorsing her. She's a tremendous lady. As you can see, she's out here right now in the rain doing some grassroots work. And that says a lot about her character. She didn't have to come out here, but she came because it's the right thing to do for the people. She definitely believes in community work. So peace and love.
Amen. And that's Pastor Mo, LRP, we endorse Latisha Johnson. Great candidate. She has my endorsement.
Hello Detroit, my name is Myya Jones. I am running to be the next state rep for District 4, and that encompasses the Woodbridge area, which we're in right now. It also has Midtown, Techtown, Wayne State, all the way over to Grass Street and Harbor by the airport. It also has all of Hamtramck, Motown, and the North End area.
So Miss Myya, so we have you. We want to talk to you today because we are going to endorse you on the People's Action Slate.
Thank you.
Right? So we want everybody to kind of get to know you. Ask you a few questions that we know the city of Detroit residents want to know a little bit about. Okay? So we wanted to talk a little bit about car insurance and how Detroit has some of the highest car insurance there is, right? And how they do the redlining. Do you have any information on that, or what do you plan to try to work towards as far as insurance rates?
Okay, so I know you see my video when I talk about how we drive around town with no insurance on our car because it's just too high.
Yeah.
So Detroit is one of the poorest areas in Michigan, except we have the highest insurance rates. So a lot of that is due to the fact that they judge insurance rates based off of zip codes. And if you're in a bigger city with people who make less money with high crime rates, they really work up the insurance rates. So with me, I really want to eliminate redlining and all that has to do with really, in my opinion, is really racist the way they do car insurance. So stopping that first and foremost, and then making sure that car insurance rates is not just by where you live, but what your record is.
Okay. So what about like the foreclosures and some of the high home costs that we have here? How do you feel about that, or what some things you want to try to work on if you're elected into doing that?
So a lot of that has to do more with the city, but advocacy is a big part of what I want to do too, even though I'm in the state house. But as we know, we have someone here who did a lot of illegal home foreclosures. So first, how we can address that with our city and our mayor, you know, the person who's there. But with the state house, I really want to start programs where people in Detroit are able to buy back their homes. People who are lost homes. I know my family lost our home in foreclosure as well. I don't know what my mom is going to do about it, but people want to have the opportunity to own their homes and raise their families. So whatever we can do about that is what we need to do.
Okay. And what about education? Because we know that Detroit right now, they've closed half of the public schools, and you know the education rates are very low in Detroit. You have any insight or?
Yes, so the first thing I want to do is make sure that public funding stays with public schools. They're trying to implement laws to where private schools and profit charter schools get public funding. So making sure we stop that is the first thing I want to do. And then they also judge it if your school performs low, they cut funding. We need to give more funding to schools who are performing low, because if you don't invest into the schools, how are we supposed to learn?
Yeah. Awesome. So talk to me a little bit about your platform exactly, or what you want people to know about Myya.
So about Myya Jones. So as everyone know, I grew up in Detroit, grew up poor, Section 8 housing, Medicaid, all that, bridge card, we had it all. So I want to just make sure programs that help me out and my family out growing up helps everybody else out too, but also give them access to things to elevate their lives. So we don't have to grow up and grow out of Detroit. You can grow up and stay in Detroit too. It's an important thing I want to put out there. And then my biggest thing is, although I'm going to do all the platforms like everybody else, I want to give young black women a chance to have a seat at the table, have a voice and have an opinion, and implement policy and laws. People don't believe that black women candidates are viable, especially young women like me who are 23 years old. So showing them that we have a voice, we have brains, we're not just girls who are poor and uneducated in Detroit. So proving them wrong and also giving us representation is really what I want to do. That's my biggest thing. I'm all for the black girl power. Black girl magic.
I love that.
I'm Mark Payne. I'm a candidate for state representative in the 5th House District. The district goes as far as west as Grand River and Myers. It goes as far as east as Lodge and Webb. And then it goes as far as south as Fort and Schaefer. Then as far as north as Dexter and Davis.
Hey, welcome, Mark. I appreciate you coming out in this short notice. I know this is a crucial time with 2 weeks underway for the election. I just want to ask you a few questions regarding, you're running for state rep. That's a very important position. You're going to be dealing with legislation and creating laws for the service of the people. So let's go ahead and jump right into it and ask a little bit about your platform. I know you used to be a former educator, so I know education is something that is a priority for you. So what are you going to do in terms of the education, man? You know, Detroit, we had a lot of school foreclosures, things of that sort, and all those things that has been attacking our schools. And the education, the quality of the education is extremely low right now. If I recall, we scored the lowest in the entire country when it comes to test assessments. So the question I have is that, what do you plan to do in regards to that?
So, education is very, very important. We have to make sure we have quality education for our students, for our children, so they can grow up and be the best that they can be. The thing about it is, we have to listen to the teachers. As a former teacher, we have to make sure we listen to the teachers and promote and advocate the things that the teachers want, since the teachers are on the front line. So the solution is talking to the teachers and then putting those solutions into policy and then funding those solutions. So the solution is very simple, and that's just about the end of it. I can go into a lot of different other policy issues, but when it all comes down to it, we all know the solutions to the problems. We just have to fund the problems, and we have to have the political will to fund those problems. And so we got to make sure that our schools constantly stay properly and adequately funded, so we can have wraparound services that deals with the whole child, mental health, counseling, things of that nature, so we can, create a better future for ourselves.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. The other thing is I want to talk about, man, is something that, and I've been asking every candidate this, you probably take a wild guess. It's something that has been a prevalent, real prevalent in the communities. Something that has actually been affecting, the real demographics, the real population of the city of Detroit. Auto insurance, it's been a real big, it's been a real big plague on the city of Detroit. So my question is to you, what is your opinions? What are you going to do to affect the auto insurance? Do you have a plan, or is this? Are you willing to create a plan? If not, if you don't already have one in regards to auto insurance.
So I'm willing to sit down with all of the stakeholders and all of the interested parties and craft a solution so we can lower our auto insurance. And that's the bottom line. I'm not about to get into which stakeholder blaming this stakeholder. We need to all sit down and craft a solution to get our auto insurance rates lower. So we need to all come to the table, and they need to leave the table feeling as though they lost something, and the consumers have to win. It's just that simple. It's a whole lot of reasons about why things the way they are. I have an opportunity to go to Lansing and sit down with all the stakeholders and craft a real solution to lower our auto insurance rates. And that's the bottom line.
So based upon this being like bipartisan, working with Republicans and Democrats, that's going to take.
Absolutely. It's going to have to be a bipartisan effort. I mean, it's 110 state legislators. You need 56 legislators to pass a bill. It's not even that many Democrats in the House of Representatives as of right now. Things may change as the election goes by. So it has to be a bipartisan approach, plain and simple.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about in regards to, we talked about insurance, and then we also talked about education. What about, we dealing with right now, it appears to be gentrification, right? We see a lot of blight. We see a lot of development in the city of Detroit. Are you an advocate for home affordability?
Yes. I'm also an advocate in making sure that we can keep our folks inside of their houses. So as a state legislator, that's something that I can do, make it harder for folks to get put out their houses as it pertains to the foreclosure crisis. I also want to be a strong advocate for blight abatement. I've been knocking doors in my district, and I've seen a lot of blight, a lot of destruction and things of that nature. Houses are not being taken care of. People don't know who own the houses. So I want to create some type of program to get some extra funding from the state in order to address this major blight issue in the 5th district.
Okay. Another one of your platforms that I seen.
How y'all doing?
Hey, peace and love. It's another platform that I seen, revenue sharing. Can you share us a little bit of information about that for the people who may not know what you're referring to?
So revenue sharing is money that's redistributed to the cities, villages, and townships.
Okay.
The money pays for essential services like fire, police, EMS, services for our city. And if we don't get our fair share of revenue sharing, then those crucial services can be cut, which will lead to not being good for our city. I'm planning on making sure that our revenue sharing is only increased and never cut. And if you don't have quality people there that know the legislative process and know that Detroit's revenue sharing can be potentially cut, then it's in danger of actually being cut. So I want to be protective of the money that we have coming from the state.
Okay, that's what's up, man. So, man, I know you for quite some time. I know you as a person who's very committed to the cause. One of the things that people may not know about you that I know, and you've actually educated me and several of my former members and current members in the organization, is about political analysis, understanding the history and the current political status quo in the city of Detroit and in the state. You've been doing political classes for how long now?
I've been doing political education for close to 2 years now.
2 years, and I think that's tremendous, because when we're talking about voters' education, a lot of times half the battle is just honestly knowing what is what, understanding the history and knowing and moving forward, so you can make informed choices. So if you can just give a quick background of some of the work and your experience and why you are qualified to be a state rep, and why did you run to be state rep?
Okay. Well, for the past 3.5 years, I've been in Lansing working as the Chief of Staff for the current State Representative of the 5th District, Representative Durhal. And I've been able to learn the legislative process. I've been able to build relationships. I've been able to go to all kinds of forums and all types of programs, Michigan State Legislative Leadership Program. I'm also a graduate of the Great Lakes Political Academy. So I've had extensive training on policy and legislative issues so I can hit the ground running as soon as the people put me there. In addition, the political education just started because people would ask a whole lot of questions, and I realized that a lot of people don't know about basic things that I hear every day in Lansing. So I decided to take everything I learned and I put it into a curriculum. And it started out as a 13-week curriculum, and I just continued to keep going and going and going because the people enjoyed it. And it's something that I'm going to continue to do as a state representative in the 5th District.
So what were you primarily doing before you got yourself involved with Fred Durhal? Because I know you mentioned, you said you worked under Fred Durhal, Chief of Staff. So before then, what were you doing prior?
Well, I'm a lifelong Detroiter, graduated from Cass Tech, went to Eastern Michigan, graduated from Eastern Michigan, and I became a school teacher. I did that for 5 years. I taught preschool all the way to 8th grade. And I also was a substitute for Detroit Public Schools for a whole year and a half.
Okay. Last question. What sets you apart from all the other candidates that's running currently right now? You have to say, why should someone vote exclusively for Mark Payne for District 5?
Well, I'm knowledgeable about legislative policies, legislative issues, and the legislative process. I have a heart of service. I've been serving my community, whether it be teaching or teaching political education. I have the dedication, I have the heart and love of the people.
All right, man. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you coming out, man.
All right, man.
It's been a pleasure. Mark Payne, make sure y'all vote for him on August 7th. Again, that's August 7th. Polls open at 7 o'clock and they shut down at 8 p.m. Y'all make sure y'all come out. Mark Payne for District
5.
District 5, all right? Peace and love, TPA.
Hi, my name is Samantha Magdaleno, and I'm running for State Representative in District 6. District 6 includes Ecorse, River Rouge, Southwest Detroit, all bottom half of Detroit, all the way to Belle Isle.
So Samantha, I want to thank you for coming out. I know out of your rough day, I know you got a lot of, knocking on doors. So I just want to give a general background to the people in terms of, what's your platform, what are you focusing on? You've been a grassroots community activist for quite some time. So it's very important for people to have background and education about, who you are and also what are you planning to do when you get in office. So could you briefly give a little bit of background of your involvement as far as community work, just real brief?
Yeah, so briefly, I've been doing it for over 10 years. Literally started in high school, throughout my bachelor's degree, my master's degree. I've never taken a break, really focusing on immigration, but specializing in actually training communities in strategic thinking and how to address issues without actually relying on politicians to actually push for change themselves using people power.
Okay, and that's very important, especially our organization. We call ourselves the People's Action. We truly believe that the power resides and rests within the people. So that's a very important thing. So I commend you on taking that initiative with the community work. I guess the other question I want to ask you. So let's talk about your platform. You got three main things that you're focusing on. One of them I found was interesting in terms of you said voter suppression. So what are you planning on doing in terms of the voting aspect?
So we have a lot of voter suppression here in District 6, and we have one of the lowest voting turnout in District 6. So what I'd like to do is actually have automatic voter registration for you as soon as you turn 18 and you're a citizen. Like, you don't have to register, you don't have to go fill out anything. Like, it's a right that our ancestors died for. We shouldn't have to continue to have to jump through hurdles to get through to it. So 10 other states have it. It's definitely something that's plausible. Illinois has it, and I think we can push for it here in Michigan.
Okay. That's a good point. And then, of course, the insurance. I mean, Michigan has a big problem when it comes to auto insurance. I mean, that's one of the things that's been prevalent over the course of years. I can't stress how some people don't even use the Detroit address just simply so they can get cheaper insurance. So, what is your approach to it, and what do you plan to do anything when you get in the house in terms of auto insurance and dealing with the red line that a lot of Detroiters face?
Yeah, so definitely my approach to insurance is going to be twofold. It's going to be on the inside, working with other legislators to look at insurance policy plans. Current Assembly Chain is working on one of fair reform plan, and I'm liking it because it does address redlining. It does address when you're seniors, like it actually dropping instead of increasing. But I also want to advocate for those that are not in office to collectively start putting pressure on particular politicians that are holding this bill back. And I want to make it personal. That's what no other candidate really talks about or is willing to do. Like, I want to tell them, like, look, I was in the room, so-and-so is very against it, their name, not just the Republicans, but making it personal. And I want to start pushing it further, grassroots style, so that way we can get insurance. Because what legislators fail to realize is when they pass these policies, it personally affects us. It hurts our jobs, it hurts our families, it hurts our education, because you can't get to school, you can't get to work, you can't get to doctor's appointments. So all of this really affects us. So we need to make it as personal as it is to us, to them.
So I guess the other question I wanted to ask you about on your platform is the driver's license, things of that sort. So what do you plan on doing with that? What is that about?
So in 2008, we actually had driver's licenses for undocumented people. And having driver's licenses for undocumented people doesn't just directly affect the undocumented people, it benefits all of us. Because if you get into an accident with somebody uninsured, you're going to end up getting screwed out of the deal. So it's safer to make sure everybody has access to auto insurance, which means everybody needs a driver's license. And then that way, also immigrant families can stay together. Right now in the Trump administration, they're targeting them like crazy, and we don't have an immigrant champion in office. So I feel like that actually started as one of my main points, and after door knocking, that's when I was like, okay, auto insurance has to stay on here, because everybody else promises it, but when they get elected, they're silent. And me, I'm too stubborn. Like, there's no way I'm gonna drop it. So I'm like, okay, this is the biggest concern, that's staying on there. And then when I was walking through, my hood, and I noticed, are you registered? No. Are you registered? No. I was like, okay, voter suppression. So that's how I came up with like my 3 platforms.
Wow. And that's pretty much something that I think that most candidates that are running should come up with their platform based upon the grievances and the needs of the people. You don't just say, okay, I think this is what I think people need. You base it upon actually getting out here, communicating with people, and talking to them. That's how you develop your platform. I got one last question I want to ask you. The Emergency Manager Act. This is what, Public Act 436. How do you feel about that? I mean, I know at this point it's already been passed, but if there was a proposal to repeal it, would you be open to that? And I just want your opinion, because there's a lot of strong feelings about that. We know initially I forgot what it was called. It was Public Act 4 or something, but initially people voted it down. Then they added the money to the bill. They got where people can vote on it. It was only the House of Representatives and the state legislators. So the House of Senate, I'm sorry. So with that being said, how do you feel about it? I just want your opinion about it.
I would vote to repeal it. The first chance that I get, I mean, we've seen what happened in Flint. We see what's happening with DPS over here, and Detroit's the only city that literally has unqualified teachers, and this is all rooting from the emergency manager law. So that's something that we definitely need to repeal.
Okay. Well, it was a pleasure talking with a hard worker. So make sure y'all come out. TPA is endorsing Samantha for state representative in District 6. We asking y'all to come out and support this lady. She's been, like I said, y'all heard her, she's been out here putting in work for 10 years. And I can say, I vouch for that. She actually has been out here. And this is why you should vote for her, because she's sincere. She cares about her community. And every time I see her, she's sweating because she's busting her behind, seriously. So peace and love. And hopefully y'all get out and vote.
Hi, my name is Najanava, Harvey-Quinn. I'm running for state representative in District 7, which includes the city of Highland Park, northwest part of Detroit. So starting at like Livernois 8 Mile down to Greenfield, and then working our way down to 96 in Myers.
Hey, thank you for coming out. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So we're gonna just jump right into it. There's a lot of things that's going on. This is a big race, right? This is your first time running, right?
First time candidate, yes.
Yep. You come from a grassroots family. Blair Anderson, former Chicago Black Panther, a lot of history.
Current Black Panther, you would
current,
fight for that.
Yeah, current. Yeah, you're right, current. Your mother's also been a Black Panther.
Yes.
So you come from a very rich history family.
Yes.
So you know about grassroots, you know about work. Which brings me to your platform. It's all about revolutionary. It's all about reform.
Yes.
So let's jump into your criminal reform. What does that entail?
So when I speak about reforming the criminal justice system, the first thing I want to look at are these mandatory minimum sentences that we have on nonviolent petty crimes that often ruin the records of our men, our women, people with low income who can't fight against it, basically. And so when we're looking at that, we need to do away with them, especially like marijuana-related offenses, because then we're basically sentencing them to say, hey, since you have this on your record now, you aren't eligible for working a 9 to 5. So now you have to hustle, even if that's what you weren't planning on, even if that wasn't what you were planning on doing in the first place. But now that's kind of like the only options that they have. And also, when we're looking at our bail system, a lot of times if you were to go to jail and you're given a bail, who pays that bail? Like, no, seriously, who would pay it?
If I have somebody,
Right.
bail bondsman, somebody.
So you have a bail bondsman, and then you pretty much owe them your life, or your grandmother, mother, somebody mortgages their home, or let's say you're missing work for a week. You're missing that 40 hours a week worth of pay. Then what does that do to your family? So where the bail bond system doesn't affect the rich people, the 1%, it's detrimental to our society. So we really need to think about that and what our criminal justice system is doing to low-income families.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. Okay, so I want to go right into the next question. The mass water shutoffs, man, it's crazy in the city of Detroit. The emergency manager, when he put that out, they say almost roughly close to 1/3 of the city of Detroit has experienced water shutoffs.
Yep.
We pay twice the national rate for water, and it's crazy because we supply roughly 1/5 of the world's fresh water. So it's crazy to think it's like going to Germany and you're paying the top dollar for a BMW. It's ludicrous.
Yeah.
So water affordability, what is that about?
So I think that when we need to look at a moratorium on water shutoffs right now. When we're surrounded by all these lakes and waters, and we have Nestle that's pumping $800 million of water and paying $200 a year, while a lot of our water bills are edging towards $200. And we already know that we live in the poorest big city in the United States. So obviously we can't afford it. And then on top of that, when we can't afford our water, they're then putting it on our homes. So now we have taxes on our homes that we can't pay. So now not only do we have our water shut off, but we lose our home. And that shouldn't happen. We shouldn't be surrounded by all water. We shouldn't be supplying water to all of our neighboring states, and then we can't even afford water here. So we're not taking care of our own while we're taking care of Nestle. So we have people in Lansing who are catering to corporations, which we see every day, and it's still happening while we're dying here. We're seeing we're seeing health breakouts, hepatitis. It's so much going on surrounding water affordability. And if we were paying Nestle's rate, I think on average, most of us wouldn't even pay $1, but few of us would owe less than a dime if we were paying what they paid a year.
Wow, that's that changes the whole perspective on how we look at water and the rates that we're paying. So that's pretty much privilege.
Yeah.
Privilege. The other question I want to have, and this is one of the questions I've been asking all the candidates that we've got on the slate: insurance.
Yeah.
Auto insurance. It's crazy. I mean, when you look at auto insurance, it even affects the demographics. People are not even putting their address as Detroit because they don't want to pay those high rates, right?
Right.
So what's your opinion on that? What are you an advocate for moving in the direction? Are you somebody that would be willing to fight to have a reform in even the insurance of how it works?
Absolutely. So we have a couple different things that you look at here. So this is the auto insurance and insurance firms that are here are the most successful in the country, and it's because we're paying the highest rates. So regardless of if it's here or up north, they're still higher than on average across the country. But my idea is to say, hey, since everybody's saying that it's not redlining and they want to deny what's happening in Detroit, then why don't we have a uniform rate? So it's like, hey, if it's $250 and everybody says that that's supposed to be okay, if they were paying that up north, we would be hitting them in their pockets. So everybody would see it, and I bet we would see reform then. If we were saying that there couldn't be any redlining and that everybody had to pay that same rate, so everybody's paying their fair share. Because what you are seeing is that all these corporations and all of these businesses are coming into Detroit and people aren't changing their addresses. So Detroit's missing out on taxes because of that, and we still have people who aren't paying what we're paying here. So they're paying here, they have insurance, while we can't afford it because we're not afforded the opportunity to have family that lives in some part that's across the red line where they don't have to pay that. So yes, absolutely. The whole insurance system needs to be restructured, and that goes back to the part of corporations where we're giving them discounts, where insurance has bought out a lot of our legislators. Republican, Democrat, I'm not sure who's bought out at this point, but it's not working. And until we turn the house blue with some true blue people who want to fight for our people, then we're not going to see any reform that way.
Okay, I like that. I definitely like that. So my last question is that, you know, you're a new candidate running. Why should people vote for you? What makes you more qualified than the candidates that you are running against? You know, why should people? What's your background, your experience? What makes you a candidate to choose for the people?
So I don't know if qualifications are working for us right now, because a lot of the people who are in Lansing, they've been there and we haven't seen anything change. So I think that right now it's, hey, I'm ready to fight.
Okay.
So if you want someone who's going to fight for you, I would definitely say vote for me, because I'm not going to stop fighting. It's in my blood. We've been doing it. We're going to continue to do it. Whether I'm in office or not, you're going to keep seeing my name on the ballot because I want to fight for our people. So I'm going to fight beyond this election. I'm going to fight whether I get in office or not. But if I'm working with legislators, I think it would be easier to get our agenda, things that would work for our communities across.
All right. Well, you heard it from the Queen herself. Thank you. And you're running for district.
I'm running for District 7, Detroit and Highland Park.
So y'all make sure y'all come out and vote for her on August 7th. The polls open at 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. She's, like I said, she's from the grassroots. She's committed to the cause. Vote for her. You know you're voting for grassroots. Peace and love.
Thank you very much for that.
My name is Gary Pollard, candidate for state representative here in District 9. District 9 is located primarily on Detroit's west side. The eastern boundary is Roselawn. The northern boundary is I-96. The western boundary is Telegraph. The southern boundary goes into Dearborn, approximately 1 mile.
With some of the issues or the concerns that you just said, what are some suggestions or some things that you plan to work on or try to make sure we have?
One of the things is, I think, Proposal A that was passed many years ago needs to be revisited on property taxation with our residential neighbors. But even more specific to seniors is, I'd like to see certainly the tax on their pensions totally repealed. I don't think the state needs that money, and they certainly shouldn't look for that money out of our seniors who spent their entire lives and careers already paying taxes. And now that they're on a fixed income, the state comes in and imposes this new tax, which had never been done. Yet the seniors every day read in the paper and see on TV where the wealthy are getting all these tax breaks. You know, and they feel like it's on their backs, and no one's helping them. So I want to go back in. If there is not legislation pending that I can support, I will write a bill myself to do that. Also, just on property taxes, I'll be weighing measures and seeing what can be done to give them some relief. Okay. Our seniors, you know, in this vulnerable time of life, should not be pinned down on whether they should get their food and get their prescriptions filled or staying in their home.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so I'm very sensitive to that. I want to do whatever I can to find some relief, and I think that will help.
So another question though, what about the high auto insurance? We all know that residents in the city of Detroit, we are like redline, not even just the city of Detroit, but we're talking about Detroit now. It's definitely a lot higher out here.
Yes.
What are some things that we can do, or how do you feel about the high insurance rates that we pay in Detroit? What are some things?
Well, certainly, it's not new to Detroit, let me say. When I first started working as the chief of staff in Lansing in 2002, Michigan was 26th on that list. Now Michigan is number 1.
Wow.
And in 2002, we were trying to cajole our colleagues, at least on the Democratic side, and any moderate Republicans to help Detroit out in this issue. But we haven't been able to do it, but I think now that Michigan is number 1, perhaps we'll get some Republicans that will pay attention because their constituents are being hit as well. More than that, I want to say this. We have to be careful out here that while Detroit's been in this financial Jim Crow, over redlining, which no one wants to recognize, not even the courts. Certainly the folks know that they're being redlined, but I don't think we want to jump from one pot into a burning skillet. Okay, so we need to make a fair system where people are not being charged for things like their education level or their credit score or whatever crimes might be in their neighborhood that have nothing to do with auto insurance. Okay? Your driving record, your claims, those are things I think that the auto insurers should look at. Not all these other ancillary, what they call discounts. You know, they call them discounts, but actually they use those to penalize those in urban areas more than others. And by the way, let me just point out one other thing. You probably haven't heard this. But Michigan, unlike Illinois, California, and other states, have an elected insurance commissioner. Why doesn't Michigan have an elected insurance commissioner? We have an insurance commissioner. Chances are you don't know who that is.
No, I don't.
But that person is responsible for insurance companies overcharging Detroiters like they have been. Every single Detroiter that owns a vehicle can tell you, you know what, if I go and buy a brand new car, my insurance each month is going to cost as much as that new car.
If not higher.
If not higher, and that's just outrageous. Okay? And many times, you know, you can have a horrific driving record in the suburbs. You may even have a DUI or 2 and still have a lower rate than Detroiters. That has got to stop. And I think if we had an insurance commissioner like California has, that commissioner will look out for us because that insurance commissioner has to get elected. And I think that should be an elected position.
Okay, so it's an initiative for them to actually try to work for us because they
Yes.
won't get in otherwise.
Right now they're working for the insurance and banking industries. Okay? Not for the consumers in Michigan.
Yeah.
Okay? And so those are some of my views, but I can tell you I will be out fighting tooth and nail on this issue. We need to come to some resolution, but it shouldn't be one to charge you more because you're a female, for example. And from what I'm seeing right now, that's the case. So I'm very skeptical when all of a sudden I see advertisements and billboards all over the place to say, hey, why are Detroiters paying way more? Why are Michiganders paying more? Just out of the blue. I mean, who is this person coming in to save us?
Yes.
Without announcing who they are. And they have a lot of money, evidently. And I simply believe that the people themselves, they can weigh in such a way to get us as candidates, as lawmakers, out to do what's fair to them. And it comes down to fairness. Auto insurance, educational funding comes down to fairness.
So, just to kind of close everything up, why should Detroiters come out and vote for you August 7th?
Because the system is not set up fair. Fairness and justice, those are the answers that people are looking for. okay? So when you go to your old elementary school like Parker, which is right here in this neighborhood, and you see it's closed, then you go to McFarland, it's closed, and then you go to our Blue Ribbon School, Barton, it's closed, and Mackenzie High School is closed and shut down. But all these residents know they pay taxes for the schools I just mentioned, but there are no schools. So where's that money going? That money is obviously it's leaving this community, it's going elsewhere. And chances are it may not even be in the city of Detroit.
So you gonna help us figure out?
We need to at least do something. And what those schools that are still standing, why can't they be recreation centers? Why can't they be community centers? They should be resource centers so people can utilize them. We certainly need that. We need resource centers. We need recreation centers. We need places that the community can gain benefit from. And I believe that when the state came over and the state closed those schools, they've taken our money. They've given no account for themselves. Yet they leave these buildings standing there, which is driving the property values down. Okay, and the same people that did this would never do that where they live. Okay, it comes down to fairness, and I believe the people need some fairness, but I want to go to Lansing and fight very fiercely for those that have been disenfranchised. Okay?
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
Very much.
Thank you for being out with us. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Good luck. We're supporting you.
Well, we support you as well.
Thank you.
You know, I appreciate your efforts. Okay?
Thank you very much.
All right. God bless.
God bless you.
Yes.
Hey friends, Abdul El Sayed here, running for governor of the state of Michigan. I'm a doctor by training, public servant, and a former educator. And I'm running because we need to get back to the ideal of a government for people and by people.
Abdul, it's a pleasure. I'm a big fan of yours. I really admire the work that you've been doing in the community. Let's get right to it. Detroit is one of the most economically deprived cities in the country. We had our largest mass foreclosures that happened in 2015. It was actually the largest in history. We've had mass water shutoffs. Roughly 1/3 of the city has been experienced water shutoffs. So there's a couple of questions that I want to ask. I've knocked on pretty much all around the city of Detroit, thousands of doors, and I understand the grievances of the people. So let's get into the housing, affordable housing. City of Detroit, there's been many people that feel that it's been gentrified. There's a lot of good development that's coming to the city, particularly in downtown, but it seems that people are being pushed out because they can't afford the rising of the prices, and also they're not getting enough jobs. According to the 139 square miles data report, there's only one job available for every 30 citizens in Detroit. That's not enough. So when we're talking about affordable housing, what can we do for that?
Yeah, so look, here's a crazy statistic. 36% of owned homes are going to be foreclosed upon in the next year. And the reason why is not because people can't afford paying their mortgage. It's because people can't afford paying their taxes. So we've got to address that system. Right now, one of the biggest issues of that, people are being over-assessed. They're being assessed at 50% of the value of the home. You imagine you go up to Troy, tell these folks who own $400,000 homes they're going to pay $200,000 in property taxes at pitchforks. And the fact is, we're doing the same thing proportionally in communities like Detroit. So what we've got to do is address that over-assessment, number one. Number two, we've got to make sure that the folks who are speculating and driving up the values of homes, they're not in a position to speculate. We've got to make sure that folks who are organic in Detroit, people who have been in the community for a long time, have the best shot at being able to buy homes out. And then, most importantly, we're in a position to keep people in their homes, even if they can't afford them. That means making sure that we're bridging folks who might be in need for the resources that they need to stay in their homes with access to those resources at the state level and at the municipal level. And then, if somebody were to be foreclosed upon, we've got to keep the housing in the community. So empowering community land trusts, right, that have a vantage point on that community to make sure that they can support and keep that house from being, flipped with a focus on helping to gentrify the city out. And so we've got to make sure that the folks can afford the homes they own. And the other side of that is also renting. Right now, the state preempts any sort of access to rental support, to rent control, and we want to undo that law. We want to make sure that local communities can actually enact rent control, because it's one of the most important things we do to keep rental renter-occupied homes affordable. We also want to pass a renter's bill of rights. That means it empowers renters over landlords who might be looking to flip them out, right, to replace them with somebody who's paying a higher wage. And any development that happens in the city of Detroit has to be done equitably, has to include real affordable housing, not affordable housing that's sent to the floor of the people who live there, right? Meaning that affordable ends up being $3,000 a month. It's ridiculous. But truly affordable housing, because as we're seeing these developments, we got to make sure that those developments aren't the cause for people to be kicked out of their homes and this mass gentrification that can happen. I also just don't believe that the demolitions program has been in the best interest of the city. Right now we're using hardest hit funds that were meant to empower people to stay in their homes to break homes down. And that just doesn't make sense. Plus the fact that when I was at the health department, we audited that program and showed that it was exposing kids to lead, and yet this administration under the current mayor continues to demolish those homes, and it's wrong. And so we've got to move up and move forward on policy that puts the state in the position to be able to empower homeowners and to stay in their homes, and empower renters over landlords who might not have their best interest in mind.
So what you're saying, Abdul, particularly, is that some of the money that's being allocated from U.S. Treasury that's going towards, demolition, you would probably try to make sure that most of that advocate in terms of most of that money being,
used to keep people in their homes.
Keeping them homes, right? What it initially was used for. Okay, that's
what it's supposed to be used for, right? And look, I think in certain neighborhoods, demolitions are a good thing. I think they make sense in certain neighborhoods. But let's be clear, the idea that somehow you're going to demolish a bunch of homes in these neighborhoods, sell them as bigger plots to folks who might want to buy up so that they can build themselves a new home and then in effect gentrify the space, and usually sold to developers, I don't think that that's a system that's in the best interest of the folks in the community. And let's be clear about something. Right now, the question is what's the future of Detroit, right? And who are the future residents of Detroit? And I happen to be in medical school in New York while Harlem and Washington Heights were going through some of their worst gentrification. I remember watching a Whole Foods open up in Harlem and be like, man, that's a kiss of death, right? We can't let that happen in Detroit. We've got so many neighborhoods where the soul and the resilience of the city rest, and we've got to make sure that any sort of focus on development and access to opportunities is shared equity, meaning that we're really investing in a neighborhood, investing in opportunities for business ownership, home ownership, high quality schools, and the opportunity for folks to stay and to build, rather than in effect gentrifying the city out and then pushing those folks out in the suburbs, as has happened in so many other major American cities.
Okay, so let's jump to the next question. This is something that's been very prevalent in the city of Detroit, something that when you look at the demographics of the city of Detroit, a lot of people don't even use the Detroit address because they don't want to pay for these rates, and it's the auto insurance.
It's crazy.
That's a huge, big thing in Detroit right now. Redlining. Some people around Michigan don't believe in redlining, but Detroit is here. We definitely believe that it's been redlined because our rates are the highest in the country. Abdul, what can we do to change that?
So just the nature of the problem, people in Detroit pay fivefold the national average in auto insurance. 50% of Detroiters drive dirty because they can't afford something as basic as auto insurance. We got to address this, and we've got a 4-part plan to reverse the rates. Number one, no more redlining. There have been bills pushed that we want to put our shoulder into that would make it illegal to use information about anything other than your driving record and whether or not you're older or younger than 25 to make decisions about what your rates should be, right? That's number one. Number two, we need a Truth in Insurance Commission. What would Truth in Insurance do? We put people like you in positions to hold the auto insurers accountable. How much money are you making? How much money is in the catastrophic claims fund? How are you creating the formulas that are setting people's rates, right? And we got to be able to hold them accountable. Number three, there's a tremendous amount of exploitation in the system. And the three biggest exploiters are the auto insurers, the hospitals and doctors, and the trial lawyers, right? Why? We all know what the auto insurers are doing, right? They make these rates. We don't know how much money they're making. We know it's a lot. Number two, though, the doctors and hospitals are charging huge amounts for health care on auto insurance. And they're charging way more than they would charge health insurance or charging Medicare or Medicaid. So we've got to set a schedule that's consistent with what the Medicare rate is at some proportion, and then we've got to hold them to it so that they're not nickel and diming auto insurance and then driving up the rates for everybody.
Okay.
And then lastly, it's the trial lawyers, right? Exploiting the system, right? You got injured in an auto accident, we hear that all the time. And then these folks prey on these people, telling them, oh, you're going to have this huge payout. But really, you know who always gets paid? The lawyer always gets paid. By the auto insurer, which drives up the rate for everybody. And then lastly, we're one of the only states in the country that asks auto insurance to be health insurance too. So we've got to stop doing that. How do we do that? Pass universal health care. Everybody has health insurance. We let auto insurance go back to being auto insurance, right? And the rates go down 60% there. Okay. So we've got an opportunity to comprehensively change the system. Now there are other plans on the books, right? And I have some issues with those because what they end up doing is shunting poor people into worse services. I just don't think that's fair. I'd rather have the structural fix that allows everybody to have high quality auto insurance and at the same time brings down those rates for everybody by holding those industries and those corporations accountable.
Okay, I love it. I love it. The next question that I have to ask you, and this one is concerning businesses in the city of Detroit. Right now, when we're looking at it from a demographic aspect, you know, entrepreneurship is always a major factor. It creates jobs. Right now, 39% of the entrepreneurship in the city of Detroit is by Caucasians, and then at 42% is Asians, and then only at 2% is African Americans. And here in the city of Detroit, 80% of the population is African Americans. So right now, we're over here off of Living Noise in between 7 and 8 Mile. This is actually the largest black business district in the city. And actually it's the third largest in the country. What can we do for entrepreneurs, for minorities, to sustain a business and more opportunities for them to get grants and things like that to keep their business sustainable?
Well, right now, Negus, we have an agency called the Michigan Economic Development Corporation at the state level. MEDC is supposed to be the business hub and business investment hub for the state. But you know what it ends up doing? Ends up being a vehicle for passing off huge subsidies to big corporations that are usually multinational corporations, rather than investing in small business and entrepreneurship opportunities in the state itself. And I would rather take the MEDC from being this subsidizer of big corporations. I'd rather it take that money and start investing it instead in the ability to implement and build a small business and incubate it, and then the ability to scale that small business into a medium or even a big business. But we've got to be focused on geographic diversity, right? Right now, we don't have the opportunity to do that, right? So if we're really thinking about investing locally in the neighborhoods where African American folks are, then I think we have the opportunity to really invest in the opportunity for business ownership in the African American community so that the wealth stays in the local communities rather than being siphoned off to some corporate headquarters somewhere else, right? You think about opening a coffee shop, right? You can imagine somebody opens a Starbucks, right? That Starbucks, 30% of that money is going out to Seattle. Imagine you just open up a mom and pop shop, that money's staying in the community. But we've got to give folks the early grants, the ability to move through the bureaucracy, to address some of the barriers that they might have, to build that business. And then if they succeed, then they've got opportunity to get another grant that helps them to scale that business. Maybe open up a second shop, a third shop, right? And it's not just food, right? You're talking about manufacturing, you're talking about artisan crafts, you're talking about retail. Those are all things that we can really invest in. Here's the most important thing. If we were to face tough financial times, the financial opportunity that the state of Michigan has everything to do with whether or not our economy is robust or it's not. And in 2008, when the economy went south, our economy wasn't robust to it because so much of our economy was dominated by these few corporations. So if they take a hit, then all of us take a hit. Rather than being able to say, well, look, we've got a diverse economy. Part of it takes a hit. There are other jobs here that sustain, so we don't get hit as hard.
Okay, I love it. That's a great explanation for that. The other question is, I mean, this race is unique is because of all the surrounding notorious attention and media coverage that's been happening in Flint, right? We know what took place. We know the bad decisions that were made. How can we prevent something like that reoccurring? You know, I mean, what happened in Flint is a catastrophe, and this is something that's going to still affect children generations down. And we don't want to have another governor that's incompetent that makes those same mistakes and decisions. It was catastrophic. What are we going to do about this lead poison that we see in Flint? And then they just came out with a news article last year that showed that even in some pockets of Detroit, in zip codes, that there's still lead. And as you alluded to earlier in the conversation about years back, you have also shown that these were all you know, things that could have been prevented based upon lead poisoning and things of that sort?
Yeah, so I'll tell you this. Right now, if we want to get right on Flint, we've got to pick a governor who understands the importance of people, right? Snyder is an accountant. And so he was cutting corners, cutting costs, and ultimately hurting a lot of people. Made a decision to change the water source, which leached a bunch of lead out of the piping, which poisoned 9,000 kids in Flint. I've spent at least a day a week in Flint, and I'll tell you, the water is still not clean. Flint still does not have clean water. But we've got a responsibility to get the leaded piping out. That, to me, is the most important thing. 12,400 pipes. They've got to be replaced. And frankly, in this city, we have lead piping too. We've got to do something about it. We've got to fix it. We've got a plan for a pure Michigan infrastructure bank that would create the financing mechanism to finally be able to do that over time. We've got to hold people like Nestle accountable. They borrow for $400 a year, unlimited amounts of our water, while people in communities like this one get their water shut off for $400 a month. And so we've got to force them to pay their fair share and be able to take that investment and invest in fixing the pipes across the state. But lead poisoning is not just water. Lead poisoning is also about housing. So if a house is built before 1978, the probability that there's leaded paint in the walls is nearly 100%. So we've got to be investing in real estate policy that protects people in their homes, whether it's, you know, on the real estate side, that if you're going to sell a home that's got lead paint in it, that you've got to be able to mitigate it, or if you're a landlord, that you're responsible for something that would happen to a kid in that housing. And then we've just got to enforce universal health care and access to early childhood education. It's the most important thing you can do to reverse the consequences of lead poisoning. So the minute I'm elected, we would appoint a Flint task force. Their number one job is to secure access to health care and education in the long term, and to get lead piping out of the ground. And then over the long term, we would have an office dedicated to lead poisoning in the state Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and they would be empowered to promulgate rules around housing and around water protection.
Okay, that's perfect. So making Flint a high priority.
It's got to be. I mean, look, 4 years later, right? I think 1,550 days today.
The standardized testing, I think it needs to be, because I've taught in schools before. I taught in an African Center school in Detroit, Timbuktu. One of the things that I thought was a challenge is that when they do the assessments, when they do the grades, and basically on the schools and whether or not they should be on the priority and all sorts, they don't include the educational game, right? So some of these schools get students that comes in and they'll be like at a 3rd grade level, and
they work
be
miracles,
6th grade,
right? Yeah.
They work miracles, right? So they may not get them at a 6th grade level. They may get them to a 5th grade level.
Yeah. But two years growth in 1 year, and you're still punished for it.
Yeah. Accountability when we're talking about the schools.
I mean, that's the thing. So number one, I don't believe in shutting down schools. It doesn't solve anything. Mm-hmm. Number two, right? When you look at what it means to have an accountable school, all of those tests, frankly, the only thing that really measure is poverty, right? I mean, if you want to be the best predictor of how kids are going to perform, is poverty. And so what happens is, I mean, frankly, it is like the entire DeVos game. Their game is basically measure poverty from the schools, but don't actually correct in terms of investing more in that school. Instead, just shut it down so that a for-profit charter school can move in, take the building, make a ton of money, and is not even accountable to the same set of responsibilities as the public school. I mean, that's the whole point. How do we turn, frankly, public school for poor kids into a profit-making machine? It's disgusting. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Is you end up with schools getting shut down, for-profit charter schools that aren't any better, usually are worse. They're not held accountable in the same way, but somebody's making a ton of money off the money that we're supposed to pay to educate our kids, right? And that system's got to go. So, yeah, it's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, it is. And so hopefully we get you in, because we got to do something. This can't continue to happen.
No.
Detroit scored the lowest in testing this year out of all the other schools in Michigan, and Michigan had one of the lowest scores across the country. So obviously we need more attention when it comes to these schools. I want to jump and ask you another question. This actually is my last question. Every time I go on doors, I knock on doors and I talk to people and I say, hey, what's one of your biggest concerns? What's your number one concern? They always say crime here in the city of Detroit. Crime is very prevalent. Robberies, things happen at these gas stations. People are very concerned about the safety and security in their city. What's your ideas and things of that in terms of helping out with that, particularly in areas like Detroit?
Look, the biggest predictor of crime is poverty. Right? If you want to know the likelihood of any kind of crime happening in a community, ask yourself what the median income in that community is, right? And we don't want anybody having to resort to crime to be able to afford the basic things. And when we think about crime, oftentimes people think about these sort of, these folks who are living large on a criminal lifestyle. It's not normally how it is. It's mainly people who are just driven to the edge of poverty and have to try and make ends meet, so they resort to crime. And the best thing we can do to address crime is to rebuild schools and to empower communities with access to locally owned businesses that create jobs. That's the most important thing we can do. In the short term, though, right, we have to change the way we police. And I think that the responsibility of policing is to police with communities rather than on top of communities. And those police should come from the communities that they police. That means that police should be focused on de-escalating, on trauma-informed services rather than throwing somebody to the ground. Now, I'll be honest, right? Like, as somebody who's been frankly abused by police, I know the experience of being a young person of color in the quote-unquote wrong place at the wrong time and get my butt kicked by a cop. And or being in New York after I came back home from Oxford with a fancy doctoral degree, walking around in a hoodie after a workout, being asked to show what's in my bag. And he said, "What's your name?" I said, "I'm Dr. Abdul El Sayed." He's like, don't be cute with me. I said, "I'm not." Right? You keep going, it's not going to end up the way you think it's going to end up. But I was empowered at that time. For so many folks, the heavy hand of the law is just a fact. And so we've got to change the way we police. And what I mean by that is we're so focused on over-policing petty crime and under-policing serious crime that what happens is we basically tell people that their bodies are worthless. So we can come and violate your body whenever we want because we think you might have a gram of marijuana in your pocket. But then if somebody were to murder you, we wouldn't close the case because your body's worthless. We got to do exactly the opposite. Your body's valuable. And so we're not going to violate your body over something as stupid as a gram of marijuana. But if somebody were to violate your body, we're going to put all our resources to close the case. If we do that, it fundamentally changes the conversation about crime because people feel like they're empowered and dignified, and if something really bad were to happen, then the law is going to get them. You see what I'm saying? Rather than just the police being a nuisance, right? They come in and run up on you because you just happen to be a young person of color, right? But if something bad were to happen, you can't turn to the police because you don't trust them. You got to fundamentally change that conversation. I think if we are serious about solving poverty and we're serious about policing in the right way, where we're really, really heavy on serious crime, somebody gets killed, somebody gets raped, right? And we're less focused on petty crime, it can change the crime conversation.
Okay. Man, I love it. I think that's the best. I think that's the best direction because we need to look at preventative measures and not just band-aids and things that's already happening. Right. And if you look at any country, Honduras, anywhere where there's a significant high rate of crime, there's always a significant correlation of poverty. It never fails. And if we want to change crime, we have to take care of the economy that we live in. And it's not no coincidence that Detroit is one of the poorest cities in the country. It's also significantly also highest crime place in the country as well. So
if we were to solve poverty, do the work on education, do the work on empowerment, jobs, and if we were to close every single case of murder and every single case of rape and every single case of violent crime, the whole conversation about crime changes tremendously, right? Because people know they're out here, right? So if you're going to let this whatever circumstance turn into violence, you know that the law is coming after you. But for the rest of the time, when you're walking around on the street, right, cops just, right, go have a great day. The relationship that we have with police has to change, right? And so much of it can change if we're willing to focus on the serious things, right? I don't care that some kid's running around and got a gram of marijuana in your pocket. Okay, it should be legal anyway, right? Those aren't the issues that really create the kind of fear of crime, right? It's when somebody's out pulling some groceries out of the car and they get mugged. Right? Those cases need to be closed immediately, right? Rather than having a bunch of police run up a bunch of kids because they think that they might have some marijuana. Right. I mean, it changes the perspective. The resources have to focus on the serious stuff, and not so much on the petty stuff.
My last question to you would be, what if for those who don't necessarily know who you are, and may not necessarily know your background, what makes you exclusively different from the other candidates? What makes you special? Why should people vote for you than the other candidates?
I was never supposed to run for office. And my dad, if he knew that his eldest son would have run for office when he immigrated from Egypt, I think he would have stayed back home. I became a doctor because I wanted to heal people. And then I came to appreciate that the politics sort of made me sick. And that's what rebuilding a health department shut down when the city went through emergency management. Watching emergency management poison 9,000 kids in Flint, watching Donald Trump get elected. And then I had to ask myself what my responsibilities were. And that's when I decided to run. I'm the only person in this race with executive experience in government. I'm the only person who's not trying to self-fund or buy an election, who's not taking corporate money, right? I'm the only person in this race that has actually delivered for folks in this community, whether it's universal access to glasses in our schools, standing up to some of the biggest polluters who poisoning the air our kids breathe, making sure our kids weren't being exposed to lead in their schools. I've delivered. As a young person who hasn't ever been part of the political machine, I think differently about what I'm about to do. And I think we need something different. If you're going to trust the same old people to give you some different kind of results, then it doesn't really quite make sense to me. We need new blood, a new perspective, a new approach, and somebody who's not bought off by the corporations who keep buying and selling politicians. And I'm the only one in this race who offers that. And also, I don't care about the office, about the position as much as I care about the work. I mean, I was in part raised by my grandmother in Egypt who never got to go to school, an illiterate African woman, who always used to remind me that I was no better than any of my cousins, that I was the one who got to grow up in the United States, and my life is an accident of history. And, opportunity shouldn't be an accident of history, it should create for people. And I've always believed that my responsibility to my opportunities and my privilege is to make sure that other people have it too, not to go make a bunch of rich people richer or to while it away and living a nice life. I think it's about the work that we do, and at some point, right, I'm going to end up in some pot in the ground, and when I meet my whip maker, I want to be able to say I did my best with what I have.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Durhal, it's been a pleasure. You have our endorsement, and we're going to make sure we do everything in our power to get you in office. We need you. All right?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
It's her birthday, too. It's a
happy
good
birthday!
Thank you.
Amazing!
Yeah.
Thank you.
How old?
Uh-oh.
Never asked that question.